The moment Daniel Brooks grabbed his chainsaw and ran into a storm toward live power lines, he knew one thing. He'd already lost the battle against falling for his neighbor. But that realization came too late, after the HOA accusations, after the threats to his business, after he'd pushed Lena Moore away to protect everything he'd built as a single father. Now, with electricity crackling through rain and a tree pinning her house, the only question that mattered was whether he'd reach her in time. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to where it all started. To a Saturday morning, a broken lawnmower, and the woman who shattered his carefully controlled world. If you want to see how Daniel's choice changes everything, stick with me until the end. And hey, drop a comment with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. Now, let's dive in. The sound hit Daniel Brooks like a physical thing, a mechanical scream that tore through the Saturday morning quiet he'd spent 5 years perfecting. He jerked upright from where he'd been kneeling in his garden, trowel suspended midair, dirt cascading from the blade. For a moment, he couldn't process what he was hearing. It was wrong, all wrong, like metal eating itself alive. His daughter Emma's voice drifted from the kitchen window. "Daddy, what's that noise?" "Stay inside, sweetie," he called back, already moving toward the fence line, his jaw tight. The screaming intensified. A lawnmower, he realized now, but one being tortured beyond any mechanical mercy, and it was coming from next door. The house had been empty for 3 months, ever since old Mrs. Patterson moved to assisted living. Daniel had enjoyed the silence, the buffer it provided. His landscaping business meant he spent his weekdays surrounded by noise, engines, blowers, the constant din of transformation. Saturdays were his sanctuary, pancakes with Emma, quiet gardening, the predictable rhythm that kept his world stable. He reached the fence and looked over. The woman was maybe 30, dark hair pulled into a haphazard ponytail, wearing jeans and a tank top despite the morning chill. She was wrestling with an ancient push mower, forcing it across a yard that looked like a lunar landscape. Rocks, uneven ground, patches of weeds thick enough to strangle machinery. The mower was smoking, actually smoking, and she was still pushing. "Hey!" Daniel shouted over the noise. "Hey, stop!" She didn't hear him, or didn't care. The mower hit something, probably another rock, and the sound went from scream to death rattle. She yanked the starter cord once, twice, nothing. "Stop!" Daniel's voice cut through the sudden silence. The woman's head snapped up. Her eyes found him over the fence, dark, direct, and absolutely furious at the interruption. "What?" She didn't shout it. Somehow that made it worse. "You're destroying that mower. The yard's not ready for cutting. You need to clear the rocks first, level the ground. I need," she interrupted, each word precise, "to get this yard under control before the HOA finds me, which, according to the lovely letter I got yesterday, is about 48 hours from now. So unless you're offering to help, maybe mind your own business." Daniel felt his back teeth grind together. "I'm trying to save you from what? Getting my deposit back? Too late. Making a good impression on my new neighbors? Also too late, apparently." She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of oil. "Look, I appreciate the expert advice, really, but I've got this handled." "You clearly don't." The words came out sharper than he'd intended. He watched her expression shift, not quite anger, something more calculating. "You know what's funny?" She set the mower handle down carefully, almost delicately. "I've lived in 7 places in the last 10 years. 7. And you've already made it into my top 3 most irritating neighbors. I'm not trying to, but you're also..." She paused, and something in her gaze made his stomach tighten. "You're also the only one who never stops watching." The comment landed like a stone in still water. Daniel felt heat creep up his neck. That's not... Your bedroom light goes on at 5:30 every morning. You make your daughter pancakes on Saturdays. I can smell them. You water your garden at 7 p.m. on weekdays, never misses. You notice everything, Daniel Brooks." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Yeah, I know your name. The HOA letter mentioned you. Apparently you're the neighborhood's golden boy, successful business owner, involved parent, property values wherever you go." "How do you..." "Small talk with the mail carrier. People love to talk." She picked up the mower handle again. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a yard to destroy and a life to rebuild. She yanked the starter cord. The mower gave a pathetic cough and died. Daniel should have walked away, should have gone back to Emma, to their pancakes, to the safe predictability of their Saturday routine. Instead, he heard himself say, "What's your name?" She looked up, surprised. "Lena. Lena Moore. Lena Moore." "You're going to flood the engine, Lena Moore. You need to let it rest, drain it, probably replace the blade after what you just put it through. I don't have time for, and if you keep going like this, you'll have a dead mower, a yard that looks worse than it does now, and that HOA fine anyway." He gripped the fence top. "At least let me look at it." "Why would you do that?" Good question. Daniel didn't have a good answer. "Because that noise is ruining my Saturday, and because if I have to listen to you destroy another piece of equipment, I might lose my mind." Lena studied him for a long moment. Then, inexplicably, she laughed. A real laugh, surprised and genuine. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me in months." So come fix my mower, golden boy. But I'm warning you, I'm not good at owing people favors." Daniel was already moving toward the gate between their yards, a gate he'd never opened in 5 years of living here. The metal creaked as he pushed through. Up close, Lena's yard was even worse than he'd thought. Neglected for months, maybe longer. Mrs. Patterson had been elderly. The maintenance had clearly slipped years ago. Lena watched him approach with her arms crossed, defensive. "Before you start judging," "I'm not judging. Everyone judges." "I'm assessing," Daniel corrected. He crouched beside the mower, ran his hand along the blade housing. It was hot enough to burn. "When did you move in?" "Thursday night. Why?" "And the HOA letter?" "Came yesterday. Apparently there's a 72-hour grace period for new owners to address obvious property violations." She said it like she was quoting. "Which is a hell of a welcome wagon." Daniel sat back on his heels. "The HOA president is Frank Winters. He's particular." "That's a diplomatic way of saying he's an asshole." "I was trying to be neighborly." "Please don't. I've had enough fake nice to last a lifetime." Lena moved closer, looking down at the mower. "Can you fix it?" "Maybe. But that's not your real problem." Daniel stood, scanning the yard. "You need the rocks cleared, the ground leveled, proper grading so water doesn't pool against your foundation. Then you need to deal with those." He pointed to the overgrown bushes blocking her windows. "And that. The fence, sagging in 3 places. And definitely that. The tree." Lena followed his finger to the massive oak at the back of her property. "What's wrong with the tree?" "It's leaning. See how the root plate's lifting on the left side? That's been compromised, probably during one of the storms last year. It's big enough that if it goes, it'll take out your back wall. Maybe mine, too." Her face went pale. "How long do I have?" "Could be months, could be the next big wind." Daniel shoved his hands in his pockets. "You need an arborist out here, probably a structural engineer to assess the risk. Then someone to either stabilize it or take it down safely." "How much does that cost?" The fear in her voice made him soften his tone. "Couple thousand, minimum. More if they have to remove it." Lena was quiet for a long moment, staring at the tree like it had personally betrayed her. "I don't have a couple thousand. I barely had enough for the down payment on this place." "What about—" Daniel stopped himself. "What about my ex-husband? That's what you were going to ask, right?" Her laugh was bitter. "He kept the good house, the new car, and his 24-year-old dental assistant. I got this place in a fresh start, which seemed like a fair trade until about 48 hours ago." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." "I'm not." But her voice wavered. "I just need to get through the HOA inspection. After that, I can figure out the rest." Daniel knew he should leave it alone. Should fix the mower, maybe offer some basic yard advice, then retreat to his side of the fence and his carefully maintained distance from other people's problems. He had Emma to think about. A business that couldn't afford complications. A life built on stability and predictability. But there was something about the way Lena held herself, like she was bracing for the next hit but refusing to fall down, that made him pause. "I could help," he heard himself say. Lena's eyes snapped to his. "What?" "With the yard. The HOA inspection is probably Monday or Tuesday, which gives us tomorrow and Monday if we move fast. I could clear the rocks, level the ground, Get it presentable enough to pass. The words were coming faster now, his mind already cataloging what he'd need. The tree's a bigger problem, but if I stabilize it temporarily, cable it to the fence post, maybe shore up the root plate, it'll buy you time to save up for proper treatment. Why would you do that? Because... Daniel stopped. Why was he doing this? Because that tree is my problem too if it falls. Because I have the equipment and the knowledge. Because, Lena prompted. Because you're right. I do notice everything. And I notice when someone's trying to handle more than they should have to handle alone. The admission felt dangerous. Daniel hadn't let himself notice anyone's struggles in years, not since his ex-wife left and he'd learned that caring about other people's chaos only brought chaos into your own life. Lena was studying him with those dark, direct eyes. What do you want in return? Nothing. Nobody does something for nothing. Then consider it an investment in my own property value, Daniel said, even though they both knew that wasn't it. Or? He hesitated. His landscaping business had the same logo he'd designed himself 5 years ago in Microsoft Paint. Basic, forgettable, the kind of branding that made potential clients scroll past. He'd been meaning to hire someone to fix it, but graphic designers cost money, and Emma's after-school program wasn't cheap, and there was always something more pressing. You're a graphic designer? He asked. Lena blinked. How did you... The decals on your car. More design solutions. He nodded toward her driveway where a dusty sedan sat covered in moving boxes. If you're starting over, I'm guessing you're freelancing? Trying to. Her expression was wary. What are you thinking? My business needs a rebrand. New logo, website redesign, maybe some marketing materials. I was going to hire someone eventually. Daniel met her eyes. I fix your yard, you fix my image. Trade work. No money changes hands, no favors owed. That's not an equal trade. What you're offering is thousands of dollars of labor, and what I need is thousands of dollars of design work. I've gotten quotes. He'd gotten one quote, actually, and nearly had a heart attack at the price. We both get what we need without depleting bank accounts that probably can't handle it. Sounds equal to me. Lena was quiet, weighing it. You have a daughter. The change of subject caught him off guard. Emma, she's 7. I saw her in your kitchen window this morning. She waved at me. Lena's expression softened slightly. I don't want to make your life complicated. Single parents don't need complications. How do you know I'm single? Because you water your garden at 7 p.m. instead of having dinner with a partner. Because you make pancakes alone with your daughter on Saturday mornings. Because you notice everything, which means you're carrying everything too. She tilted her head. Takes one to know one. I don't have kids, but I know what it's like to build a life solo and protect it like a fortress. The observation hit closer than Daniel liked. This is just yard work and design work. Is it? Yes. He said it firmly, as much to convince himself as her. I'll start tomorrow early, 6 a.m. before it gets hot. Should take me most of the day for the initial clearing. Monday I'll do the grading and stabilize the tree. You'll pass inspection Tuesday. And in return, you start on my logo concepts. We'll meet in the evenings next week, go over ideas. I'll need final files by the end of the month. I've got a commercial proposal I'm submitting that needs professional branding. Lena extended her hand. Deal. Her grip was stronger than he expected, her palm calloused. Not the hands of someone who'd always worked behind a computer. I should warn you, she said, not letting go. I'm very good at what I do. You might actually end up with a business that looks professional. I should warn you, Daniel countered. I'm particular about my work. Your yard's going to be the best maintained property on the block. Competitive much? Always. She smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. This might actually work. Daniel released her hand and stepped back, suddenly aware of how close they'd been standing. I should get back. Emma's probably eaten all the pancakes by now. Thank you. Lena's voice stopped him. Really, I know you said it's a trade, but thank you. He nodded, not trusting himself to say more, and headed back through the gate. As he crossed into his own yard, he heard the kitchen door open. Daddy! Emma bounced down the back steps. Who's that lady? Is she nice? Why was her mower so loud? That's Miss Moore. She just moved in. Daniel scooped Emma up, grateful for the familiar weight of her, the uncomplicated love. And yes, she's nice. Are you going to be friends? We're going to be neighbors, sweetheart. That's different. How? How indeed. Daniel carried Emma toward the house, where their pancakes were probably cold and their quiet Saturday was thoroughly disrupted. Neighbors help each other out sometimes, that's all. But you never help the other neighbors. Emma, you always say they're too nosy and we keep to ourselves. She looked at him with those serious eyes that were too knowing for 7. So why are you helping her? Because I couldn't look away, Daniel thought, but didn't say. Because she called me out for watching. Because she's trying to handle everything alone, and I remember how that feels. Because it's the right thing to do, he said instead. Emma seemed to accept this. She wriggled down and ran ahead into the house. Daniel followed more slowly, pausing at the door to look back at Lena's yard. She was still standing where he'd left her, looking at the tree with her arms wrapped around herself. Even from this distance, he could see the tension in her shoulders, the weight she was carrying. Just yard work and design work, he told himself firmly. A practical arrangement between neighbors. Nothing more. But as he watched Lena finally turn and head into her house, Daniel had the unsettling feeling that he'd just opened a gate that was going to be much harder to close than it had been to open. The rest of Saturday passed in its usual rhythm. Daniel took Emma to the park, grilled burgers for dinner, read her 3 chapters of their current book before bed. Normal. Predictable. Safe. Except he kept catching himself looking toward Lena's house. The lights went on around 7, off again at 11. Her car didn't move. She stayed in all day, probably unpacking, settling into the space that was supposed to be her fresh start. Sunday morning arrived with the kind of crisp clarity that made Daniel's landscaper instincts sing. Perfect conditions for heavy work. He was up at 5, moving quietly so as not to wake Emma. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, had agreed to watch her for the day. The one person in the neighborhood he trusted, an elderly widow who'd known Emma since she was a baby. By 5:45, he'd loaded his truck with equipment. Rake, shovel, pickaxe, wheelbarrow, work gloves. His commercial-grade tools, the ones he used on client properties. This wasn't a favor, it was a trade. He needed to remember that. The sun was just starting to paint the sky pink when he knocked on Lena's door. She answered in running shorts and an oversized sweatshirt, coffee mug in hand, looking like she'd been up for a while. "You're early. Light's better in the morning, less heat." Daniel shifted his weight. "I brought my own coffee, but I'll need access to your outdoor spigot for water." "It's around the side." Lena stepped out onto the porch, surveying his truck. "You brought a lot of equipment." "It's a lot of yard." She smiled faintly. "I'll stay out of your way. Shout if you need anything." "Actually," Daniel hesitated. "If you have work gloves and don't mind manual labor, I could use help with the rock clearing. It'll go faster with 2. Lena's eyebrows rose. "I thought you were the expert." "I am, which is why I know that moving rocks is just moving rocks. Doesn't take expertise, just willingness to get dirty. Give me 5 minutes." She disappeared inside. Daniel started unloading, setting up his work zone with the efficiency of long practice. He was marking out sections of the yard when Lena emerged in jeans, work boots, and a faded college t-shirt that had seen better days. "Where do you want me?" Daniel handed her gloves and a bucket. "Start in that corner. Anything bigger than your fist goes in the bucket. When it's full, dump it in the wheelbarrow." Aye, Captain." They worked in silence for the first hour. Daniel had always preferred quiet on job sites. It let him think, plan, stay in control. But Lena's presence was different. She didn't chatter or complain, just worked steadily, methodically, occasionally stopping to stretch her back or drink water. Around 7:30, she broke the silence. "How long have you had your business?" 6 years. "Started it right after—" He stopped himself. "Right after?" she prompted. "Right after my ex-wife left." The words came out flat. Daniel focused on the rock in his hands. "Emma was 2. I needed something with flexible hours, something I could build around her schedule." "That must have been hard." "It was necessary." Lena was quiet for a moment. "I get that." Necessary versus wanted. Story of my life lately. What did you want? The question surprised him. He didn't usually ask personal things. Honestly, I wanted the marriage to work. I wanted to believe that love and commitment mattered more than, she laughed shortly, than youth and novelty, apparently, but necessary was getting out, starting over, choosing myself for once. How long were you married? 8 years, together for 10. Lena dumped a bucket of rocks with more force than needed. I designed his dental practice logo, did all his marketing materials, built his entire brand while working a corporate design job to pay our bills. And when he left, he kept using everything I'd created. Legally couldn't stop him. It was done during the marriage, technically joint property. That's infuriating? Yeah, she grabbed another rock. Which is why I'm starting completely fresh. New city, new clients, new everything. Nobody gets to take my work and claim it as theirs anymore. Daniel understood that bone deep. My ex wanted me to sell the business after she left. Said it was too unstable, too risky, that Emma needed security and I should get a real job with benefits and a salary. He threw a particularly large rock into the wheelbarrow with satisfying force. Instead, I built it into something successful enough that I bought her out of the house and got primary custody. Good for you. Good for Emma, he corrected. That's all that matters. They fell back into silence, but it felt different now. Less empty, more companionable. The sun climbed higher. The work continued. By noon, they'd cleared half the yard, and Daniel's back was reminding him that he wasn't 20 anymore. Break, Lena announced, standing up and wincing. I made sandwiches. Hope you like turkey. You didn't have to. You're working on a Sunday instead of spending time with your daughter. Least I can do is feed you. They sat on her back steps, sweaty and dirt-covered, eating sandwiches and drinking cold water. Lena's house was still mostly unpacked. Daniel could see boxes stacked through the kitchen window. How's Emma? Lena asked. Mrs. Chen's, right? I saw you drop her off. You notice things too. Told you, takes one to know one. Lena bit into her sandwich. She seems like a sweet kid. She's everything. Daniel didn't mean for it to come out so raw. Everything good I've done, every right choice, it's all for her. That's a lot of pressure. That's being a parent. Is it? Lena's tone was gentle but challenging. Or is that being a single parent who's terrified of messing up? Daniel felt his defenses rise. I'm not. I see you, remember? 5:30 wake-ups, perfect yard. Business that never stops growing because growing means security. Never asking for help because help means vulnerability. She met his eyes. I'm not criticizing. I'm recognizing. I do the same thing, just without the kid. Then you understand why I keep things contained. Contained. Good word for it. Lena smiled sadly. Also lonely word for it. I'm not lonely. I have Emma. She's 7. She needs a parent, not a friend. That's different. Lena crumpled her sandwich wrapper. But hey, none of my business. We're just neighbors doing a trade, right? Right, Daniel agreed, but the word felt hollow. They worked through the afternoon, making remarkable progress. The yard was transforming, rocks cleared, debris removed, the basic bones of the space emerging. Around 4, Daniel started on the grading, while Lena trimmed back the overgrown bushes with a determination that suggested she was working out some feelings. Lena, he called out, careful with that branch. It's connected to... The branch snapped. Lena stumbled backward, overcorrected, and went down hard. Daniel was moving before he thought, dropping his shovel and reaching her in seconds. Are you okay? His hands hovered, uncertain where to touch, how to help. Fine. Just clumsy. But when she tried to stand, she gasped. Ankle, twisted it. Let me see. It's fine. Lena, let me see. She relented, extending her leg. Daniel knelt, carefully unlacing her boot. His hands were gentle, professional. He'd dealt with plenty of minor injuries on job sites. But there was nothing professional about the way his pulse jumped when his fingers brushed her skin. Can you flex it? He asked. She tried, winced. Hurts, but I don't think it's broken. Probably a mild sprain. Mild, you need ice, elevation, rest. He stood, offered his hand. Come on. I can walk. Humor me. Lena let him help her up, then stubbornly tried to walk unaided. She made it 3 steps before her ankle buckled. Daniel caught her, his arm automatically going around her waist. Stubborn, he muttered. Pot, meet kettle. He half carried her to the steps, eased her down, then jogged to his truck for the first aid kit he always kept there. Ice pack, compression wrap, ibuprofen. You come prepared, Lena observed as he wrapped her ankle with practiced efficiency. Landscaping's a physical job. Injuries happen. He sat back. You should keep weight off it for a couple days. I don't have a couple days. HOA inspection is Tuesday. I'll finish. Daniel, it's a trade, remember? Can't do design work with a busted ankle keeping you from your computer. It was a weak excuse. She could work just fine sitting down, but Lena didn't call him on it. Thank you. He nodded, started to stand, but her hand caught his wrist. No, really. Thank you. Her eyes were serious. I know this is supposed to be transactional, but it doesn't feel that way. And I wanted to acknowledge that. Daniel should have pulled away. Should have reinforced the boundaries, kept it professional. Instead, he heard himself say, It doesn't feel transactional to me either. The moment stretched between them, loaded with possibility. Then Daniel's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen asking when he'd pick up Emma. The spell broke. I should go, he said, standing quickly. I'll come back tomorrow morning, finish the grading, and deal with the tree. Your daughter needs you. I'll manage both. He was already gathering tools, creating distance. Keep that ankle elevated. Ice it every hour. Yes, doctor. He risked a look back. Lena was watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read, something between amusement and sadness. Daniel? Yeah. When this is over, the yard, the inspection, the design work, what happens then? It was the question he'd been avoiding all day, the one that scared him more than he wanted to admit. I don't know, he said honestly. Me neither. She smiled faintly. But I'm starting to think I'd like to find out. Daniel didn't answer, couldn't answer. He just nodded and left, the gate between their yards closing with a finality that felt like a lie. Because the truth was, that gate had been opened, and Daniel was starting to suspect that no amount of careful control was going to close it again. Monday morning arrived with clouds that threatened rain but never delivered. Daniel was at Lena's house by 6, determined to finish before the day's heat set in. Her car was still in the driveway, curtains drawn. He worked quietly, not wanting to wake her, using the rhythm of physical labor to avoid thinking about how her hand had felt on his wrist, how her question had echoed through his sleep. What happens then? He didn't have an answer, didn't want to need one. The grading took 3 hours of steady work, leveling the ground with the precision he brought to every job. By 9, he was ready to tackle the tree. Daniel circled it slowly, assessing the lean, the compromised roots, the risk. It was worse up close than he'd thought. One strong wind, and this thing would come down like judgment. He was measuring cable lengths when Lena's back door opened. You're early again, she called, hobbling onto the porch with a mug of coffee. She'd wrapped her ankle, was wearing a walking boot that looked borrowed or bought used. Told you I'd finished today. How's it looking? Daniel straightened, wiping sweat from his forehead. The grading's done. The tree's going to take most of the day. I need to set anchor points, run cables, create a support system that'll hold until you can afford proper treatment. Which might be never at this rate. Lena descended the steps carefully, testing her weight. I got an email from the HOA this morning. The inspection's been moved up to today at 4 p.m. Apparently Frank Winters has concerns about new ownership and wants to address them promptly. Of course he does. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. Frank Winters had been a thorn in his side for years, the kind of man who measured property lines with a tape measure and filed complaints about trash cans left out 30 minutes too long. He probably saw me working here yesterday and decided to make trouble. Why would he care if you're helping me? Because Frank thinks everyone should handle their own problems without outside help. Self-reliance above all. Daniel grabbed his drill. Also because he doesn't like me much. Let me guess, you called him out on something? His commercial lawn service was dumping chemical runoff into the creek. I reported it to the county. Daniel started drilling into the tree trunk for the cable mount. He had to switch companies, pay fines. Sit through an environmental impact hearing. He's held a grudge ever since. Good for you. Tell that to Emma when she asks why Mr. Winters never smiles at us anymore. The drill bit through wood, satisfying and violent. She notices these things, asks why some people don't like us. What do you tell her? That doing the right thing isn't always the popular thing. Daniel set the first anchor, tested its hold. That standing up for what matters is more important than being liked. That's a good answer. It's the only answer I have. He moved to mark the next anchor point. She's 7. She still believes the world is fair, that good people get rewarded and bad people get punished. I'm trying to let her keep that as long as possible. Lena was quiet for a moment, watching him work. My mom used to say that childhood innocence is a luxury parents create through their own stress, that kids only get to believe in fairness because adults absorb all the unfairness for them. Your mom sounds wise. She was. Died when I was 19. Lena's voice didn't waver, but Daniel heard the old grief beneath it. Cancer, fast and brutal. She'd just helped me pick out colleges, was planning to visit me for Parents' Weekend. Then 6 months later, she was gone. Daniel paused, drill in hand. I'm sorry. It's been 12 years. You'd think it would hurt less. She smiled faintly. But some losses just become part of you. You learn to carry them. He understood that. His own parents had retired to Florida, called once a month, sent Emma birthday cards with checks that were too generous and impersonal. When his marriage fell apart, they'd offered sympathy but no real help. Too far away, too wrapped up in their own lives. Daniel had learned fast that the only person he could count on was himself. You're doing it again, Lena said. What? That thing where you go somewhere else in your head. Your hands keep working, but your eyes get distant. She tilted her head. Where do you go? Nowhere important. Liar. The word was soft but direct. Daniel met her gaze, found her watching him with that unsettling perception. I was thinking, he said slowly, about how alone feels, even when you choose it. Especially when you choose it, Lena corrected. When it's forced on you, at least you can be angry. When you choose it, you just have to live with it. Is that what you're doing? Living with it? I'm trying to figure out what comes after it. Well, she shifted her weight, wincing as her ankle protested. The divorce lawyer kept talking about my fresh start, like it was this exciting opportunity. But nobody tells you how exhausting it is to start over, to rebuild everything from scratch. Daniel returned to drilling, the noise giving him time to think. When the anchor was set, he said, after my ex left, everyone told me I was better off, that I'd dodged a bullet, that she'd done me a favor. And maybe they were right, but it didn't feel like a favor. It felt like I'd failed at the one thing I was supposed to get right. Marriage isn't a test you can fail. Tell that to the voice in my head. He moved to the third anchor point. For months, I kept trying to figure out what I'd done wrong, where I'd missed the signs, how I could have been so blind to her unhappiness. Maybe you weren't blind. Maybe she was just good at hiding. Or maybe I was too focused on work, on building something stable, to notice that she needed more than stability. Daniel's hand stilled. She said I'd turned into a robot. All schedules and routines and risk management, that living with me was like living with an efficiency expert, not a partner. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then, carefully, was she wrong? The question hit like cold water. Daniel wanted to be offended, defensive. Instead, he just felt tired. No, he admitted. She wasn't wrong. After Emma was born, I got obsessed with control, making sure everything was safe, stable, predictable. My ex wanted spontaneity, adventure, romance. I wanted spreadsheets and backup plans. What did Emma need? Both, probably. Daniel laughed without humor. But she only got me. So I tried to be enough. Tried to be both parents, both approaches, everything. And burned yourself out in the process. I'm not burned out. Daniel, Lena's voice was gentle. You work 7 days a week. You haven't taken a vacation in years. You water your garden at exactly 7 p.m. because God forbid something be spontaneous. You're not burned out. You're running on fumes and willpower. I'm providing for my daughter. And forgetting to live your own life. The accusation stung because it was true. Daniel focused on the cable installation, threading steel through the anchors with hands that knew the work so well he didn't have to think. Thinking was dangerous. Thinking led to questions he couldn't answer. "I should let you work," Lena said finally. "I'm distracting you." "You're not." "I am, and you're too polite to say it." She started back toward the house, her limp pronounced. "Call me if you need anything." Daniel watched her go, then forced himself back to the tree. The work was complex, requiring focus and precision. Cable had to be exactly the right tension. Too loose, and it wouldn't support the tree. Too tight, and it could cause more damage. He measured, adjusted, tested, measured again. By noon, he'd created a web of support that would hold through anything short of a hurricane. It wasn't permanent. Nothing about this was permanent, but it would buy Lena time. The tree stood straighter now, the lean arrested, the immediate danger contained. He was coiling leftover cable when his phone rang. Emma's school. "Mr. Brooks, this is Nurse Martinez. Emma's had an accident on the playground." His stomach dropped. "Is she okay?" "She's fine, just shaken up. She fell off the monkey bars and scraped her knee pretty badly. Nothing serious, but we'd like you to come pick her up. She's asking for you." "I'll be there in 10 minutes. Daniel was already moving, grabbing tools, throwing them in the truck with none of his usual organization. He knocked on Lena's door, didn't wait for her to fully open it. "I have to go. Emma's hurt. Not serious, but go." Lena's eyes were wide. "Is she okay?" "Scraped knee, but she wants me." He was halfway to his truck. "I'll come back later, finish the cleanup." "Daniel, stop." Lena was on the porch now despite her ankle. "Your daughter needs you. The yard can wait. The inspection's at 4. I'll handle it. Just go." He wanted to argue, to insist on finishing what he'd started, but Emma's need overrode everything else. He nodded once and drove, breaking every speed limit between Lena's house and the elementary school. Emma was in the nurse's office, tear-streaked and clutching an ice pack. The moment she saw him, she burst into fresh sobs. "Daddy!" Daniel scooped her up, careful of her bandaged knee. "Hey, baby girl. You're okay. I've got you." "It really hurts," she whimpered into his shoulder. "I know, sweetheart. We'll go home, get you comfortable. Ice cream for lunch." "How does that sound?" She nodded against him, and Daniel felt something in his chest crack open. This was what mattered. Not yards, not inspections, not complicated feelings for a neighbor who saw too much. Just this, being there when his daughter needed him. The nurse cleared her throat. "The scrape is clean and bandaged. She might have a bruise, but nothing's broken. Keep the bandage dry for 24 hours. "Thank you." Daniel signed the release forms one-handed, Emma still clinging to him. "Come on, Em. Let's get you home." They were halfway to the parking lot when Emma said, "I was trying to do the whole monkey bars. Tyler said I couldn't because I'm a girl, but I can do anything Tyler can do." "You can," Daniel agreed. "But maybe we work up to the whole thing instead of trying it all at once?" "That's what Miss Rodriguez said." Emma's voice was small. "That sometimes brave means knowing your limits." Daniel stopped, kneeled down so they were eye level. "You are brave, Emma. So brave. But brave doesn't mean reckless. It means knowing when to push yourself and when to be smart." "Like you?" "Like I try to be." He smoothed her hair back. "I'm proud of you for trying, even if it didn't work out this time." "Will you still be proud if I don't try the monkey bars again?" "I'll be proud of you no matter what. Trying, not trying, succeeding, failing, none of that changes how much I love you." He tapped her nose gently. "Okay?" "Okay." She hugged him tight. "Can we really have ice cream for lunch?" "We can really have ice cream for lunch." Emma was settled on the couch with her ice cream and her favorite movie when Daniel's phone buzzed. A text from Lena. "How's Emma?" He typed back. "Scraped up, but fine. Thanks for asking." "Good. Don't worry about the yard. I've got it handled." Daniel frowned at the message. What does handled mean? Means I'm not helpless. Ankle's better. I can push a trash can to the curb. Lena, stop. Take care of your kid. I've got this. He wanted to argue, to insist on being there, but Emma called from the living room, "Daddy, this is the best part." "Coming, sweetheart." He put the phone away and settled next to Emma, letting her lean against him as the movie played. This was where he was supposed to be, where he needed to be. But part of his mind was still next door, wondering what Lena meant by handled, worrying about the inspection, about Frank Winters and his particular brand of bureaucratic cruelty. The movie ended. Emma dozed off, her head heavy on his shoulder. Daniel checked his phone. 3:40 p.m. 20 minutes until the inspection. Another text from Lena. "Inspector's early. Here now." Daniel's pulse jumped. He eased Emma onto the couch, grabbed his phone, and called. Lena answered on the first ring. "You're supposed to be with Emma," she said instead of hello. "She's asleep. What's happening?" "Frank Winters is walking my property with a clipboard and a tape measure. He's made notes about the fence, the bushes, the tree. Tell him about the stabilization. Show him the cable work." "I did. He said it's a temporary fix and doesn't address the underlying violation." Her voice was tight. "He's citing me for the tree, Daniel. Says it's a safety hazard and I have 30 days to remove it or face daily fines." "He can't do that. The tree's stabilized." "He can, and he is. Apparently there's an HOA bylaw about dangerous structures on private property. Trees count if they're compromised." Daniel was already moving, checking on Emma. She was sound asleep. He could leave her for 20 minutes if he was fast. "I'm coming over." "Don't. This is my problem." "It's our problem. That tree threatens both properties." He was grabbing his keys. "I'll be there in 5 minutes." "Daniel?" He hung up and ran. Frank Winters was standing in Lena's yard with his clipboard when Daniel came through the gate. The HOA president was exactly as Daniel remembered, mid-50s, pressed khakis, polo shirt tucked in with military precision. He looked at Daniel with undisguised irritation. "Mr. Brooks, I should have known you'd be involved." "The tree's been stabilized," Daniel said, keeping his voice level. "It's no longer an immediate danger. Temporary measures don't satisfy code requirements." Frank made another note. "The bylaw is clear. Compromised structures must be professionally assessed and either repaired or removed within 30 days of identification." "Then give her 30 days." "I'm giving her 30 days, starting from today's inspection." Frank's smile was thin. "Which means she'll need to hire an arborist, get a formal assessment, submit a remediation plan, and execute that plan, all within a month. Given the cost of proper tree removal and the timeline for permits, I'd say that's generous." "You're setting her up to fail," Daniel said flatly. "I'm enforcing community standards that protect property values for all residents." Frank turned to Lena. "I'm also citing you for operating a commercial business from a residential property." Lena's face went pale. "What?" "There's been a Brooks landscaping truck parked in your driveway for 3 days. Mr. Brooks has been observed conducting business operations on your property during posted work hours." Frank consulted his notes. "That constitutes commercial activity in a residential zone, which violates Section 12 of the HOA covenant." "That's absurd," Daniel started, but Lena cut him off. "He's not conducting business. He's helping a neighbor with professional equipment during business hours for what I can only assume is compensation of some kind." Frank's eyebrows rose. "Unless you're suggesting Mr. Brooks is providing thousands of dollars of labor for free? Because that would be quite unusual for a business owner." Daniel felt the trap closing. If he admitted to the trade, design work for yard work, Frank could argue it was a business transaction. If he claimed it was charity, Frank would question his judgment and possibly his business practices. "Mr. Brooks and I are friends," Lena said firmly. "Friends help each other." "Friends?" Frank's tone made it clear what he thought of that claim. How convenient. Nevertheless, the presence of commercial equipment on residential property for extended periods requires a permit. Since you don't have one, that's an additional violation. "This is harassment," Daniel said. "This is oversight. My job is to maintain standards." Frank handed Lena a formal notice. "You have 30 days to address the tree, 10 days to submit proof that no commercial activity has occurred on your property, and 72 hours to bring your lawn maintenance up to code. The grass is uneven, there are bare patches, and the overall presentation falls below community standards." "I just moved in," Lena protested. Thursday, which is why I'm being lenient with the 72-hour window instead of the standard 24. Frank turned to leave, then paused. A word of advice, Ms. Moore. Choose your associations carefully. Mr. Brooks has a history of flouting HOA regulations in the name of personal ethics. That kind of attitude tends to cause problems. He left through the side gate. Daniel and Lena stood in silence, the formal notice crackling in her hand. This is my fault, Daniel said. He's coming after you to get at me. He's coming after me because he's a petty tyrant who gets off on power. Lena looked at the notice, then at her yard. The grass thing I can handle, but the tree? Daniel, I don't have the money for professional removal, not even close. How much do you have? Maybe $1,000 if I max out my last credit card. And that's supposed to cover first month's utilities, groceries, gas. Her voice cracked. I can't afford this. Daniel's mind was already running calculations. Professional tree removal for something that size, with the complexity of the lien and the proximity to structures. Minimum $5,000, probably closer to $7,000. Even his connections in the industry couldn't cut that by much. What if we did it ourselves? The words came out before he'd fully thought them through. What? I have the equipment, chainsaw, safety gear, a truck to haul debris. I've taken down trees before, not this size, but the principle's the same. His brain was cataloging steps, seeing the path. We'd need to do it carefully, section by section, but it's possible. Daniel, that's insane. What if something goes wrong? What if we do nothing? He gestured at the notice. 30 days? Daily fines after that, accumulating until the tree's gone or you are. Frank won't back down. He'll force you out if he can. Why does he hate you so much? Because I don't think rules matter more than people. Because I called him out publicly and cost him money and reputation. Daniel ran a hand through his hair. And now you're paying for it. So what do we do? The question hung between them. Daniel thought about Emma, asleep on his couch, about his business, his reputation, everything he'd built, about the smart choice, the safe choice. Then he looked at Lena, standing in the yard he'd helped clear, holding a notice that threatened to undo her fresh start before it had even begun. And he remembered what he'd told Emma. Sometimes brave means knowing your limits, but it also means knowing what's worth fighting for. We take down the tree, he said, together. This weekend, when I can dedicate full days to it. We'll be careful, methodical. It'll work. And if it doesn't, then we'll deal with that too. He met her eyes. But we do it together. This isn't just your problem anymore. Lena was quiet for a long moment. Then, why are you doing this, really? Because Frank Winters doesn't get to win. Because you deserve your fresh start. Because... Daniel stopped, the words crowding his throat. Because? Lena prompted softly. Because I'm tired of being alone, he admitted. And you make me feel less alone. Even when we're just moving rocks. Something shifted in Lena's expression, walls coming down, distance closing. I make you feel less alone? Yeah. That's the scariest thing anyone said to me in months. I know. Because if we do this, if we keep doing this, it stops being just neighbors. It becomes something else. I know, Daniel repeated. I'm not good at something else. I just spent 8 years failing at something else. So did I. They stood there in the cooling afternoon surrounded by the evidence of the work they'd already done together. The cleared yard, the stabilized tree. The beginning of something neither of them had planned. Okay, Lena said finally. We take down the tree. But Daniel, if we're doing this, we're really doing it. No more pretending it's just a trade or just being neighborly. We're in this together, whatever this is. Whatever this is, Daniel agreed and felt something that had been locked tight in his chest for 5 years start to crack open. His phone buzzed. Emma, awake and asking for him. I have to go, he said. But tomorrow we'll start planning the tree removal. I'll bring the equipment over. We'll map it out properly. Tomorrow, Lena confirmed. Daniel turned to leave, then looked back. For what it's worth, you're not bad at something else. You're just bad at settling for less than you deserve. How do you know what I deserve? Because I'm starting to figure out what I deserve too. And it's not a life spent hiding behind schedules and safety. He left before she could respond, but he felt her watching as he crossed back into his own yard. Back to Emma, to responsibility, to the structured life he'd built. But something had changed. The gate between the yards was still open, and Daniel was starting to think he wanted it that way. The week that followed moved with a strange duality. Days that felt both rushed and suspended, ordinary routines layered over something Daniel couldn't quite name. He took Emma to school, ran his business, maintained the careful schedules that had governed his life for years. But every evening, after Emma was asleep, he found himself at Lena's kitchen table with tree removal plans spread between them and 2 cups of coffee growing cold. "If we cut here first," Lena traced a line on the diagram Daniel had sketched, "won't that shift the weight distribution?" "That's exactly what it'll do. We want the weight shifting away from your house." Daniel marked another angle. "The cables are holding it upright, but once we start cutting, physics takes over. We need gravity working with us, not against us." "You sound like you've done this before." "Smaller scale, ornamental trees, damaged limbs after storms. Nothing this size." He sat back, studying the sketch with a critical eye. "But the principle's the same. Respect the weight, plan every cut, have backup plans for the backup plans." Lena smiled faintly. "That sounds like your approach to everything." "It's kept me alive this long." "Has it kept you happy?" The question caught him off guard. Daniel looked up to find Lena watching him with that direct gaze that always seemed to see past his defenses. "Happiness isn't the priority," he said. "Stability is, safety, providing for Emma. Those aren't mutually exclusive. In my experience, they are." Daniel returned his attention to the plans. "Every time I've reached for happiness, for something beyond the basics, it's fallen apart. My marriage, my early business ventures, every risk I've taken that wasn't calculated down to the last detail." "So you stopped reaching?" "I stopped setting myself up for failure." Lena was quiet for a moment, her finger tracing absent patterns on the table. "My therapist told me something after the divorce. She said that protecting yourself from pain also protects you from joy, that you can't selectively numb emotions. If you shut down the bad, you shut down the good too." "Did you listen?" "I'm sitting here planning to cut down a tree with a near stranger instead of hiring professionals like a sensible person. What do you think?" Despite everything, Daniel smiled. "I think you're terrible at following advice." "So are you, apparently." She tapped the diagram. "Because a sensible person would tell me this is my problem and walk away, especially after Frank Winters made it clear he's using me to get at you. Frank's always looking for a fight. And you're always willing to give him one, apparently." Lena studied him. "What happened between you two? Beyond the runoff incident?" Daniel hesitated, then figured she'd earned the truth. 2 years ago, Frank tried to get my business license revoked. He claimed I was operating commercial vehicles in a residential zone, storing equipment in my garage, all technically violations of HOA covenants I'd signed when I bought the house. "What did you do?" "Fought it, got a lawyer, went to the city council, proved that home-based businesses are protected under local ordinances, as long as they meet certain criteria," which mine did. He remembered the stress of those months, the fear of losing everything he'd built. Frank lost, publicly, in front of the whole neighborhood at a community meeting. So he holds grudges. He holds grudges like other people hold investments, with interest that compounds over time. Daniel rolled his shoulders, trying to ease the tension that always came with thoughts of Frank. "I knew getting involved with your situation would bring him down on both of us. I should have warned you." "Would it have changed anything?" "No?" "Then why does it matter?" Lena reached across the table, her hand covering his. "Daniel, I'm a grown woman. I make my own choices. You're not responsible for protecting me from consequences." But her hand was warm on his, and Daniel found himself thinking about all the ways he'd failed to protect the people he cared about. His ex-wife, who'd needed adventure and gotten routine. Emma, who deserved 2 parents and only had him. Even his business clients, who trusted him to deliver perfection and got a man running on fumes and fear. "I'm responsible for what I bring into your life," he said quietly. "And right now, that's HOA violations and a tree that could kill us both if we mess up. You also brought a cleared yard, a fixed mower, and the first real conversation I've had in months." Lena's thumb traced across his knuckles, Stop tallying debts. This isn't a ledger. Everything's a ledger. That's how you survive. No, that's how you hide. She pulled her hand back and Daniel felt the absence like cold air. Survival isn't the same as living. He wanted to argue, to defend the walls he'd built so carefully. But Emma's voice echoed in his memory. Will you still be proud if I don't try the monkey bars again? And he wondered if his daughter was learning caution from him or fear. We should finalize the cutting sequence, he said instead, returning to safer ground. Saturday morning, early start. I'll need you spotting, managing the rope lines, clearing debris as we go. I'll be there. It's going to be dangerous. I know. If something goes wrong, then we handle it together. Lena met his eyes. That's what this is now, right? Together? Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice. Together. The word felt foreign and necessary all at once. They worked until nearly midnight, refining plans, identifying risks, preparing for every contingency Daniel could imagine. When he finally walked back through the gate to his own house, the night was cool and clear, stars visible above the neighborhood's ambient light. He paused in his backyard, looking up at the sky. Emma loved to name constellations in, and tried to remember the last time he'd felt this particular combination of terror and anticipation. His phone buzzed, a text from Lena. Thank you for not walking away. He typed back, thank you for not letting me. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, see you tomorrow. Sleep well. Daniel didn't sleep well. He lay awake thinking about weight distribution and cutting angles and the 100 ways a tree could fall wrong. Thinking about Frank Winters and HOA bylaws and the daily fines that would accumulate if they failed. Thinking about Lena's hand on his and the way she saw through every defense he'd spent years constructing. Thinking about what came after the tree was down, after the crisis passed, when they'd have to figure out what they were to each other without the excuse of emergency. Thursday brought the first setback. Daniel was pricing equipment rentals. A proper lift would make the job safer, give them better angles for the high cuts, when his phone rang. His biggest client, the one who accounted for 30% of his annual revenue. Daniel, we need to talk about the Morrison project. His stomach sank. The Morrison project was a complete landscape overhaul for a new commercial development. 6 months of steady work, the kind of contract that meant stability, that meant Emma's college fund could grow, that meant he could breathe. What about it? We've received some concerns about your business practices. Nothing concrete, but enough that we need to pause the contract until we can verify your credentials and insurance are current. My credentials are fine, my insurance is current. Who raised concerns? A pause. I'm not at liberty to say, but they came from a reliable source within your community. Something about violations, unprofessional conduct. Frank Winters. It had to be. Give me 24 hours, Daniel said, fighting to keep his voice level. I'll provide documentation for everything. Credentials, insurance, references from every client I've worked with in the past 5 years. Daniel, I want to believe this is nothing, but we have shareholders, liability concerns. If there's even a hint of impropriety, there isn't. I run a clean business, always have. His hand tightened on the phone. 24 hours. That's all I'm asking. Another pause. Fine. But Daniel, if this doesn't clear up fast, we'll need to move forward with another contractor. We can't afford delays. The call ended. Daniel sat in his truck parked outside Emma's school where he'd been waiting to pick her up and felt the walls closing in. Lose the Morrison contract and he'd lose his financial buffer. The cushion that let him turn down sketchy jobs, that let him be selective about clients, that let him be the kind of father who could take Emma to the emergency room without checking his bank account first. Frank wasn't just coming after him anymore. He was coming after everything Daniel had built. Emma climbed into the truck, chattering about her day, and Daniel smiled and nodded and made appropriate responses while his mind calculated worst-case scenarios. He could fight Frank's accusations, but that took time and legal fees he couldn't afford. He could confront Frank directly, but that would only escalate things. He could walk away from Lena's situation entirely, remove the source of Frank's current vendetta. That thought settled in his chest like lead. At home, while Emma did homework, Daniel made calls. His insurance agent, his business attorney, every professional contact he had, By the time Emma was ready for dinner, he'd assembled a file of documentation that proved beyond doubt his business was legitimate, licensed, and fully compliant. He emailed it to his client with a message that was professional and calm, and gave no hint of the rage burning in his gut. Then he texted Lena, "Can you come over? After Emma's asleep, need to talk." Her response was immediate. "Is everything okay? Just need to talk. I'll be there." Emma picked at her dinner, unusually quiet. Daniel watched her push pasta around her plate and felt guilt layer over the anger. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" "Nothing." "Emma." She looked up and her eyes were too serious for 7. "Kayla said her dad heard that your business is in trouble, that you might have to close." Daniel felt like he'd been punched. "Kayla's dad said that?" "Kayla heard her parents talking. She told everyone at lunch." Emma's voice got smaller. "She said maybe we'd have to move, that you couldn't afford our house anymore." "Emma, look at me." Daniel waited until she met his eyes. "My business is fine. Someone is spreading rumors, lies, because they're angry at me. But none of it is true. We're not moving. We're not in trouble. I promise." "But what if—" "No what ifs. I've got this handled." He reached across the table, took her hand. "You don't need to worry about adult stuff. That's my job. Your job is homework and friends and being 7. "But I do worry. I worry all the time." Tears welled in her eyes. "I worry that you're sad, that you work too much, that you don't have friends except for work people." The words cut deep because they were true. Daniel had been so focused on being enough for Emma that he'd never stopped to consider what she saw when she looked at his life. "I'm okay, baby girl." "You're lonely," Emma said, and the simple truth of it nearly broke him. "You're lonely and you pretend you're not, but I see it." Daniel pulled her into his lap, held her while she cried, and wondered when his 7-year-old had become so perceptive. Or maybe she'd always been perceptive and he'd just been too busy maintaining control to notice. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm sorry you've been worrying. I'm sorry I haven't been paying attention." "I like Miss Moore," Emma said into his shoulder. "She waved at me again yesterday. She has a nice smile." "She does. Are you friends with her?" Daniel thought about Lena's hand on his, about late-night planning sessions, and the way she called him on his carefully maintained distance. "Yeah, we're friends." "Good. You need friends." Emma pulled back, wiped her eyes. "Friends make people less lonely. You're pretty smart, you know that?" "I know." She managed a watery smile. "Can I have ice cream? I'm sad and ice cream helps." "Ice cream helps," Daniel agreed, and got them both bowls. After Emma was asleep, Daniel sat on his back porch and waited. He saw Lena's kitchen light go off, saw her silhouette cross the yard. She came through the gate without hesitation now, like the path between their houses was becoming familiar. "What happened?" she asked, settling into the chair beside him. Daniel told her everything, the client call, Frank's apparent campaign to destroy his reputation, Emma's tears at dinner. Lena listened without interrupting, her face grave in the porch light. "I'm pulling back," Daniel said when he finished. "From your situation, from the tree, from all of it. This has gotten too complicated." "No." "Lena, so—" "No," she repeated firmly. "You don't get to make that decision unilaterally. This affects both of us. It's affecting my daughter, my business, everything I've worked for." Daniel stood, paced to the porch railing. "Frank's going to keep escalating until he destroys me or I back off. Those are the only options. There's a third option. We fight him properly." "How?" "He's not breaking any laws. He's just a vindictive bastard using his HOA position to make my life hell. Then we document everything, build a case, go to the HOA board, show them he's abusing his authority for personal vendettas." Lena stood too, moved to stand beside him. "I'm not letting you sacrifice yourself to protect me. This isn't about protecting you. It's about protecting Emma." "And teaching her what? That bullies win if they push hard enough? That you abandon people when things get difficult?" Lena's voice was sharp. "Because that's what she'll learn if you walk away now. She'll learn that I put her first, always. She'll learn that you're afraid." Lena grabbed his arm, forced him to look at her. "Daniel, I get it. I understand the fear, But you told Emma that brave means knowing when to push yourself and when to be smart. This is when you push. And if I lose everything? Then you rebuild, like I'm rebuilding, like we're all rebuilding every day. Her grip tightened. But you don't lose alone. That's what you're not getting. You're not alone anymore. Daniel felt something break inside him, some dam he'd been maintaining for years. I don't know how to do this. How to let someone in, how to risk it all, how to be anything other than controlled and careful. So we figure it out together. Lena's voice softened. We take down the tree. We fight Frank. We mess up and course correct and keep going. That's what people do. I'm not good at people. You're good at me. The words hung in the air between them, loaded with meaning neither of them had named yet. Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, and saw his own fear reflected back, along with something else, something that looked like hope. Saturday, he said, we take down the tree. After that, we deal with Frank. After that, we deal with us, Lena added quietly. Yeah, Daniel agreed. After that, we deal with us. She left a few minutes later, and Daniel stayed on the porch watching stars and trying to remember how to breathe around hope. It had been so long since he'd hoped for anything beyond basic survival that the feeling was almost alien. Friday passed in a blur of final preparations. Daniel checked his equipment 3 times, went over the cutting plan until he could recite it in his sleep, ignored the voice in his head that cataloged every possible disaster. His client hadn't responded about the Morrison contract. Frank Winters drove past his house twice, slow and deliberate, a reminder that the threat wasn't going away. Emma seemed better, lighter. She talked about school and friends and didn't mention worry once. Daniel wondered if she could sense the shift in him, the way he'd stopped pretending quite so hard that everything was fine. Friday night, he tucked her in and sat on the edge of her bed like he did every night. Daddy? Emma's voice was sleepy. Tomorrow, when you're helping Miss Moore, can I come? I want to help too. It's going to be dangerous work, sweetheart. Heavy equipment, falling branches. But you'll keep me safe. The trust in her voice nearly undid him. Always. But this time, keeping you safe means keeping you with Mrs. Chen. Okay, she yawned. But after. Can Miss Moore come for dinner? I want to hear her stories. What stories? She's a designer. She probably makes pretty things. I want to know about pretty things. Emma's eyes were already closing. And I want to know if she makes you smile more. Daniel's throat tightened. She does. Good. You should smile more. She drifted off, and Daniel sat there in the dark of her room, thinking about smiling and hope and the tree they'd be cutting down in 12 hours, thinking about the ways children see what adults try to hide, and how Emma had been watching him be lonely for years while he pretended everything was under control. He checked his phone one last time before bed. A text from Lena. Ready? He typed back. As I'll ever be. That's the spirit, she replied, followed by, We've got this. Daniel wanted to believe her. Wanted to believe that 2 people with broken marriages and rebuilt lives could take down a tree without destroying themselves in the process. Wanted to believe that Frank Winters could be beaten, that his business would survive, that letting someone in wouldn't end in disaster. Wanted to believe that tomorrow's sunrise would bring success instead of catastrophe. He set his alarm for 4:30 a.m. and tried to sleep. The storm warning started at 3 in the morning. Daniel's phone buzzed with emergency alerts, severe thunderstorms, high winds, potential flooding. He lay in bed listening to the first drops hit his roof and felt his carefully laid plans crumble. You couldn't cut down a tree in a storm. The wind would make it unpredictable. The rain would make everything slippery. The lightning would make it suicidal. They'd have to postpone, which meant dealing with Frank's timeline, which meant daily fines accumulating while they waited for clear weather. By 4 a.m., the storm was raging. Daniel got up, made coffee, and stared out his kitchen window at the chaos. Lightning illuminated Lena's yard in stark flashes, the tree, the cables, the careful preparations that meant nothing against nature's timing. His phone rang. Lena. Tell me we're not actually trying this in a storm, she said. We're not. Daniel watched a branch fly past his window. We'll have to wait it out. How long do storms like this usually last? Could be hours, could be days. He heard the frustration in his own voice. I'm sorry. I checked the forecast. It was supposed to be clear. Weather happens. It's not your fault. A pause. Are you okay? Was he okay? Daniel wasn't sure anymore. Everything felt precarious, balanced on the edge of falling. Yeah, just recalculating. That's your favorite thing. Despite everything, he smiled. It's what I do. I know. Her voice was warm. It's also not always necessary. Sometimes you just have to sit with uncertainty. I hate uncertainty. I know that too. They talked for another hour while the storm raged, about nothing and everything. About Emma's perceptiveness and Lena's design projects, and the ways they'd both built walls that were starting to feel more like prisons. About fear and hope, and the terrifying space between safety and risk. When this is over, Lena said, when the tree's down and Frank's handled, and we don't have crisis as an excuse anymore, what do you want? The question Daniel had been avoiding. I don't know. Liar. He laughed, surprised by his own honesty when he said, I want to stop being so damn lonely. I want Emma to see me actually living instead of just surviving. I want... He stopped. What? I want to know if this feeling is real, this thing between us, or if it's just proximity and crisis and two broken people clinging to each other. Lena was quiet for a long moment. There's only one way to find out. Which is? We stick around after the crisis ends. We see what's left when the emergency passes and real life sets in. She paused. That's when you find out if it's real. When it's boring and ordinary and there's no dramatic reason to stay. I'm not good at staying. Neither am I. My track record is 7 moves in 10 years, remember? Her voice softened. But maybe we could learn. Together. Together. That word again. Outside, lightning struck close enough to shake the windows. And then the power went out. Daniel swore, reaching for his emergency flashlight. His phone still had signal. The cell towers had backup generators. But the neighborhood was suddenly dark. Daniel? Lena's voice was tight with fear. I'm here. Power's out. He moved to the window, trying to see through the rain. Can you see anything? There's sparks. Oh my God, there's sparks in my backyard. Daniel's heart stopped. Get out. Get out of the house now. What? If there's sparks, there's downed power lines. Get out now, through the front door, away from the backyard. He was already moving, grabbing his raincoat, his emergency kit. I'm coming over. Daniel, don't... But he was already out the door, running through the storm toward the house where Lena lived and the backyard where electricity was arcing through rain. He heard the crack before he saw it, that specific sound of wood giving way under force. Not the tree they'd been planning to remove. Something else. The HOA tree. The massive oak at the property line that Frank Winters had been warned about 6 months ago and done nothing to address. It was coming down. Daniel watched in horror as it fell in what felt like slow motion, a giant tipping over in the storm. It missed Lena's house by inches, crashing instead across the space between properties, taking down power lines, blocking both their yards with tons of wood and live electrical wires that sparked and hissed in the rain. Lena appeared in her front doorway, backlit by her phone's flashlight. Daniel! Stay there. Don't come into the backyard. He was at her fence now, looking at the destruction. The HOA tree had created a catastrophe, power lines down, debris everywhere, and somewhere in that tangle, Lena's house was trapped behind a barrier of electricity and danger. And all Daniel could think was that he should have seen this coming, should have pushed harder 6 months ago when he'd warned Frank about that tree, should have documented it, escalated it, done anything other than assume someone else would handle it. Should have. But Emma was safe at home. Lena was safe in her doorway. And the crisis he'd been so carefully planning for had arrived in completely the wrong form. Sometimes, Daniel thought, as he stared at the chaos, control was an illusion. Sometimes all you could do was respond to what actually happened instead of what you'd planned for. Call 911, he shouted to Lena over the storm. Report downed power lines, blocked access. I'm going to document everything. What are you going to do? Good question. Daniel looked at the tree. at the evidence of Frank's negligence, at the disaster that could have killed them both. "I'm going to make sure Frank Winters answers for this," he said, one way or another. The emergency response took 45 minutes to arrive. 45 minutes of Daniel standing in the rain with his phone's camera rolling, documenting every angle of the fallen tree, every downed power line, every piece of evidence that would prove what he'd known for months. The HOA tree had been a disaster waiting to happen, and Frank Winters had ignored every warning. When the fire trucks finally pulled up, their red lights painting the storm in urgent color, Daniel had already compiled a file of photos time-stamped and geotagged. He'd also pulled up every email he'd sent to the HOA board about that tree, every official complaint, every documented concern that had been dismissed or ignored. The fire chief was a woman in her 50s with the efficient competence of someone who'd seen everything. She took one look at the scene and whistled low. "That's going to take hours to clear. Power companies swamped with calls. This storm knocked out half the county." She turned to Daniel. "Anyone hurt?" "No." The homeowner got out in time. He gestured to where Lena stood on her front porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the organized chaos with wide eyes. "But her backyard's inaccessible. She's trapped inside until you can clear a path. We'll do what we can, but with live wires, we can't touch anything until the power company kills the lines." The chief made notes on her tablet. "This tree came from HOA, common property?" "Yes, I reported it as a hazard 6 months ago, multiple times." Daniel pulled up his email history. "Here. Every complaint I filed, every warning I issued, the HOA president was notified repeatedly." The chief's expression hardened as she read. "And no action was taken?" "None. He said it wasn't a priority, that the tree was stable enough." Daniel's voice was flat with controlled anger. Clearly, he was wrong. Clearly. She forwarded the emails to herself. "I'll need to file a report with the county. This kind of negligence, if someone had been hurt, we'd be looking at criminal charges." "Make sure Frank Winters knows that," Daniel said. "Make sure he understands exactly what his inaction could have cost." The chief nodded, then moved to direct her crew. Daniel stood in the rain watching them work, adrenaline still coursing through him, and felt the careful control he'd maintained for years finally snap into something clearer, something that felt less like fear and more like purpose. His phone buzzed. Emma, awake and scared by the emergency vehicles. "Daddy, what's happening? Are you okay?" "I'm fine, sweetheart. There was a storm, a tree fell, but everyone's safe." He could hear Mrs. Chen in the background, reassuring and calm. "I'll be home soon. Go back to sleep." "Promise you're okay?" "I promise." He hung up and found Lena making her way carefully around the fire trucks, her ankle boots splattered with mud. "You should be inside," Daniel said. "I should be thanking you." She stopped in front of him, rain plastering her hair to her face. "You ran into a storm toward downed power lines. You were in danger. And your first thought was to run toward it." Something in her expression made Daniel's chest tight. "That's either very brave or very stupid." "Probably both. Definitely both." She touched his arm, a brief pressure through the rain-soaked fabric. "The fire chief said it could be days before they clear everything. My backyard's completely blocked." "You can't stay here. Not without access to your back entrance. Not with live wires everywhere." Daniel was already running through options. "Do you have somewhere else to go? Family? Friends?" "In this city? I've been here less than a week." Lena laughed without humor. "Everyone I know is 3 states away." "Then you'll stay with us." The words came out before Daniel had fully thought them through, but once they were spoken, he knew they were right. Lena stared at him. "Daniel, I have a guest room. Emma will love having you there. It's temporary, just until the power company clears the lines and makes your property safe again." He met her eyes. "It's the practical solution." "Is it? Or is it you trying to fix everything again?" "Does it matter?" Lena studied him for a long moment, rain running between them, emergency lights painting everything in shades of urgency. "No," she said finally. "I guess it doesn't." By the time they got back to Daniel's house, it was nearly 7 a.m. The storm had passed, leaving behind the clean-wash smell of after rain and a neighborhood transformed by damage. Trees down on 3 streets, power out in patches, debris scattered across lawns that had been pristine the day before. Emma was awake and anxious, pressed against Mrs. Chen's side on the couch. When Daniel walked in with Lena behind him, his daughter's face transformed from worry to curiosity. "Miss Moore, did your house blow away?" "Not quite, sweetie, but a tree fell and blocked my backyard, so your dad invited me to stay here for a few days." Lena managed to smile despite her obvious exhaustion. "If that's okay with you?" "It's okay," Emma bounced up. "You can have the guest room. It has the best view. And we can have breakfast together. And you can tell me about designing pretty things and—" "Emma, breathe," Daniel interrupted gently. "Miss Moore's had a rough night. Maybe let her settle in first." But Lena was smiling, genuine this time. "I'd love to hear about what you think is pretty, after I get some dry clothes on." Daniel showed her to the guest room while Mrs. Chen took Emma to the kitchen for breakfast. The room was simple, clean, rarely used. Daniel didn't have guests. It felt strange to watch Lena set down her emergency bag, to see her belongings in his space, to have someone other than Emma occupying the careful order he maintained. "Thank you," Lena said quietly. In, Lena, for this, for everything tonight. You would have done the same. Would I?" She looked at him. 6 months ago, I would have called a hotel. Would have handled it alone because that's what I always did. But you're teaching me something different. What's that? That asking for help isn't weakness. That letting people in isn't failure. She moved closer. That sometimes the bravest thing is admitting you can't do it all yourself. Daniel felt the space between them charged with all the things they hadn't said, all the feelings they'd been dancing around since that first Saturday morning when she'd destroyed her lawnmower and called him out for watching. "I should let you get changed," he said, stepping back before he did something stupid like pull her close. "Come down when you're ready. Emma makes surprisingly good pancakes for a 7-year-old. "Daniel?" Lena's voice stopped him at the door. "When this is all over, when the tree's cleared and the power's back and I can go home, I don't want to." His heart stopped. "What?" "I don't want to go back to separate houses and separate lives and pretending we're just neighbors." She wrapped her arms around herself. "I know it's fast. I know it's probably stupid, but I'm tired of being careful, tired of protecting myself from everything, including things that might actually be good." "Lena, you don't have to say anything now. Just think about it." She smiled faintly. "Now go. Your daughter's waiting, and I smell pancakes." Daniel left before he could respond, his mind spinning. Downstairs, Emma was indeed making pancakes with Mrs. Chen's supervision, chattering about the storm and the excitement and how cool it was that Miss Moore was staying with them. "She's really nice, Daddy, and she has pretty eyes. Don't you think she has pretty eyes?" "I think you need to focus on not burning those pancakes," Daniel deflected, but Mrs. Chen caught his eye and smiled knowingly. The older woman had lived next door for 15 years, had watched Daniel's marriage crumble and his business grow and his careful isolation calcify into routine. She'd never commented, never pushed, but Daniel saw the approval in her expression now. "It's good to have life in this house again," Mrs. Chen said quietly, while Emma was distracted. "Good for you. Good for Emma. It's temporary." "Is it?" She patted his arm. "Sometimes temporary is how permanent starts." Lena came down 20 minutes later in borrowed clothes, Daniel's old sweatshirt that hung to her knees, leggings she'd had in her emergency bag, and Emma immediately claimed her for pancake duty. Daniel watched them work together, Emma explaining her technique with serious concentration while Lena listened with genuine interest, and felt something shift in his carefully maintained world. This was what his house had been missing. Not perfection or control or rigid schedules, just warmth, connection. The sound of laughter that wasn't forced or scheduled or part of the routine. His phone rang. The fire chief. "Mr. Brooks, we've cleared enough to make the property safe for inspection. Power company's still working on the lines, but I wanted to give you an update." A pause. "I also contacted Frank Winters about the HOA tree. He's demanding to speak with you." "I'll bet he is." "He's claiming you're responsible somehow, that you should have taken action if you were so concerned." The chief's voice was dry. "I showed him the email chain, reminded him that property maintenance is the HOA's responsibility, not individual residents. He didn't take it well." "I don't care how he takes it. I care that this gets documented properly. Daniel moved to the window, looking out at the damage visible even from here. What's the next step? County inspector comes Monday to assess the damage and determine liability. I've already submitted my report citing the HOA's negligence. You might want legal representation at that meeting. I will. Thank you, Chief. One more thing. The homeowner whose yard was damaged, Ms. Moore, she's entitled to file a claim against the HOA for property damage. She should document everything, get repair estimates, the works. Daniel looked at Lena, who was helping Emma flip a pancake with exaggerated care. I'll make sure she knows. After breakfast, while Emma was occupied with a movie, Daniel sat with Lena at the kitchen table and explained the situation. She listened, her expression shifting from surprise to calculation. So Frank's negligence destroyed my backyard, and I can actually hold him accountable. The HOA, yes. Which Frank represents. Daniel pulled up the photos he'd taken during the storm. We document every bit of damage, get professional estimates for cleanup and repair, file a formal claim that goes on record. And that helps with the violations he cited me for? More than that, it proves he's been selectively enforcing rules while ignoring serious safety hazards. Daniel felt the pieces clicking into place. Monday's county inspection isn't just about the tree anymore. It's about HOA oversight, about Frank's fitness to hold his position, about whether he's been abusing his authority. Lena leaned back, processing. This could actually work. It will work. We have documentation, official reports, testimony from the fire chief. He met her eyes. Frank wanted a fight. Now he's got one. What do you need from me? Everything you've got. The violation notices, the inspection report, any communication with Frank. We're building a case that shows a pattern of harassment paired with negligence. Daniel was already making notes, his mind organizing information the way it did best, through systems and structure. We present Monday at the inspection, then we take it to the full HOA board meeting Wednesday. You're really going after him. He's been going after me for 2 years, after you for a week. He endangered lives because he was too stubborn or lazy to address a known hazard. Daniel's voice was hard. Yeah, I'm going after him. Lena reached across the table, her hand covering his. Okay, but Daniel, don't lose yourself in the fight. Don't let anger make you into what you're fighting against. He wanted to brush off the concern, to insist he was fine, perfectly controlled, but her hand was warm on his and her eyes saw too much, and Daniel was tired of pretending. I'm scared, he admitted. Scared that I'll mess this up, that I'll lose the Morrison contract and the business will suffer and Emma will pay the price. Scared that Frank will win because he always wins when he wants something badly enough. Then we don't let him win. Lena's grip tightened. We're smarter, more prepared, and we actually have the truth on our side. That has to count for something. Does it? It does when you stop fighting alone. Emma wandered in, drawn by their serious voices. Are you guys okay? Daniel pulled her onto his lap. We're okay, sweetheart. Just talking about grown-up stuff. The tree? Yeah, the tree. Emma looked between them, her expression thoughtful in that way that always made Daniel nervous. Is Miss Moore staying because of the tree, or because you like her? Out of the mouths of children. Lena laughed, surprised and genuine. Both, Daniel said, because lying to Emma had never worked and he wasn't about to start now. The tree means she can't stay at her house safely. And yes, I like her. Good. Emma snuggled against his chest. I like her too. She's nice, and she doesn't talk to me like I'm stupid. You're not stupid, Lena said. You're one of the smartest 7-year-olds I've ever met. How many 7-year-olds have you met? Not many, Lena admitted, but you're still impressive. Emma beamed, and Daniel felt his heart do something complicated. This was dangerous territory, letting his daughter get attached, letting himself imagine futures that included more than just the two of them, letting hope in through cracks in his carefully maintained walls. But maybe dangerous was better than safe. Maybe risking hurt was better than guaranteeing loneliness. The weekend passed in a strange domestic rhythm. Lena worked on design projects at the kitchen table while Daniel handled business calls and Emma did homework. They cooked together, ate together, existed together in a way that felt both foreign and natural. Saturday night, while Emma slept, They sat on the back porch with wine and talked about everything except what came next. Sunday, Daniel took them both to survey the damage at Lena's property. The power company had cleared the downed lines, but the tree remained, a massive corpse of wood blocking half the yard, crushing fence posts, creating a landscape of destruction. "This is going to take thousands to clear," Lena said quietly. "Tens of thousands, probably. Plus repairs to the fence, the yard, potential foundation damage from the impact." Daniel was already calculating. "But that's Frank's problem. The HOA's insurance will cover it. If they admit fault, they will. I'll make sure of it." Monday morning arrived cold and clear. The county inspector was a man in his 60s with the weathered face of someone who'd spent a career evaluating disasters. He walked the property line with Daniel, Lena, Frank Winters, and 2 other HOA board members, making notes and taking measurements. Frank was in full defensive mode. The tree was inspected last year and deemed stable. "By whom?" the inspector asked. "Our landscape maintenance company." "I'll need documentation of that inspection." The inspector examined the root system, now exposed by the fall. "Because what I'm seeing here is advanced decay that didn't happen overnight. This tree's been compromised for years." "Mr. Brooks made claims about the tree months ago," Frank said, his voice tight. "If he was so concerned, he should have taken action." "The tree was on HOA common property," Daniel replied, keeping his voice level. "Which makes it the HOA's responsibility to maintain. I reported the hazard, multiple times." He handed over printed copies of every email, every complaint, every warning he'd issued. "All documented and time-stamped." The inspector read through the file, his expression growing grimmer. "Mr. Winters, according to this, you were notified of concerns about this tree 6 months ago. What action did the HOA take?" "We planned to have it evaluated." "But you didn't actually have it evaluated," the inspector interrupted. "You acknowledged the concern, then took no action. Is that correct?" Frank's jaw worked. "We had other priorities." "Other priorities than a tree that could kill someone?" The inspector's voice was sharp. "Mr. Winters, I'm citing the HOA for negligent maintenance of common property. You'll receive a formal report within the week, along with requirements for inspection and maintenance of all common area trees." He turned to Lena. "Ms. Moore, you'll want to file a damage claim with the HOA's insurance. This was absolutely preventable." "I understand, thank you." The inspector left. The 2 other board members, a retired teacher named Margaret and a young accountant named James, stayed behind. Margaret looked at Frank with disappointment. "I told you that tree needed attention. 6 months ago, when Daniel first raised the concern, I told you we needed to bring in an arborist. We couldn't afford—" "We have a contingency fund specifically for emergencies," James interrupted, pulling up spreadsheets on his tablet. $20,000 that's been sitting unused for 2 years because you refuse to authorize expenditures without board approval, which you keep delaying scheduling." "I don't keep delaying. You've postponed the last 4 quarterly meetings," Margaret said, citing scheduling conflicts that only seem to affect you. "Meanwhile, residents are filing complaints that get ignored. Safety hazards are piling up, and now we have county citations." Frank's face was red. "I've been doing this job for 6 years. I know what I'm doing." "Do you?" Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been using your position to settle personal grudges instead of serving the community." I haven't." Frank looked at Daniel, and something ugly crossed his expression. "This is all because of him. He's been undermining my authority since day 1. "I've been trying to keep people safe," Daniel said quietly. "Including you, Frank. Because if someone had been hurt when that tree fell, you'd be facing criminal charges right now instead of just embarrassment." "Wednesday night," James said, closing his tablet. "Emergency board meeting, 7 p.m. at the community center. Frank, you'll present a full accounting of all pending maintenance issues, all filed complaints, and your responses to each. We're also going to discuss whether you're fit to continue as HOA president." "You can't remove me." The bylaws allow for removal of officers who fail to fulfill their duties," Margaret said. "I've already checked. Wednesday, Frank. Be prepared." The board members left. Frank stood alone in the destroyed yard, looking at Daniel with pure hatred. "You think you've won?" he said. I think I'm tired of fighting you, Daniel replied. I think we could have avoided all of this if you'd just done your job instead of making everything personal. It became personal when you made me look incompetent in front of the entire community. You made yourself look incompetent. I just pointed out the evidence. Daniel gestured at the fallen tree. This didn't have to happen. None of it did. You could have addressed the tree, worked with Lena instead of against her, treated people like human beings instead of violations waiting to happen. And you could have minded your own business. Emma asked me once why you never smile at us, Daniel said. I told her that doing the right thing isn't always popular, but I'm starting to think that's not quite right. It's not that doing the right thing is unpopular, it's that people like you make it harder than it needs to be. He walked away, leaving Frank standing in the wreckage of his own making. Lena was waiting by his truck. That was intense. That was necessary. Daniel unlocked the doors. Wednesday should be interesting. Do you think they'll actually remove him? I think Margaret and James are tired of his bullshit. I think this incident gave them the excuse they needed. He looked back at Frank, still standing alone. And I think Frank just realized he's not untouchable. Wednesday's board meeting drew a crowd. Word had spread about the tree, the citations, the confrontation. Residents filled the community center, curious and concerned and ready for drama. Daniel sat in the second row with Lena beside him, Emma at home with Mrs. Chen, and watched the board assemble at the front table. Margaret called the meeting to order. We're here to address serious concerns about HOA management and safety protocols. Mr. Winters has been asked to present a full accounting of pending issues. What followed was excruciating. Frank's presentation was defensive, scattered, full of excuses and blame. When residents asked questions, he got hostile. When Margaret pressed for specifics about the maintenance budget, he couldn't provide clear answers. When James asked why critical repairs had been delayed, Frank claimed he was protecting property values by being fiscally conservative. Fiscally conservative, Margaret repeated. That's your explanation for why we have a $20,000 emergency fund that's never been used, even when we have actual emergencies? I was being prudent. You were being controlling, the voice came from the audience. Mrs. Chen, standing with her hands folded. For years, you've made decisions based on personal feelings instead of community needs. You approve requests from people you like and deny them from people you don't. That's not leadership. That's tyranny. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. I move that we vote to remove Frank Winters as HOA president, James said. Effective immediately. Seconded, Margaret said. The vote was swift and overwhelming, 23 in favor, 2 against, 3 abstaining. Frank sat at the table looking shell-shocked as Margaret took over. Mr. Winters, thank you for your service. We'll need you to turn over all HOA records and passwords by Friday. Her voice was kind but firm. James will serve as interim president until we can hold proper elections next month. Frank left without a word, his face gray. Daniel felt no triumph, only relief. It was over. Finally, over. After the meeting, residents approached Daniel to shake his hand, to thank him for speaking up, to apologize for not standing with him sooner. Lena stayed close, her presence steady, and Daniel realized that for the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in a crowd. Mrs. Chen hugged him on the way out. Your Emma will be proud of you. I just did what needed doing. You did what was right, even when it was hard. That's what parents teach their children. She smiled. And what friends teach each other. She glanced at Lena when she said it, and Daniel felt his face heat. In the truck on the way home, Lena said, So that's what accountability looks like. That's what happens when people finally get tired of bullshit. Think Frank will cause more problems? Probably. He's not the type to go quietly. Daniel pulled into his driveway. But he doesn't have power anymore. Just anger. And anger without power is just noise. Inside, Emma was still awake, curled on the couch with a book. She looked up when they entered. How did it go? It went well, sweetheart. The bad guy lost. Like in stories. Like in stories, Daniel agreed, pulling her close. Sometimes real life has good endings too. Emma looked at Lena. Are you going back to your house now? The question hung in the air. Lena looked at Daniel, and he saw his own hope reflected in her eyes. The power's back on, Lena said slowly. The yard's still a mess, but it's safe to stay there again. But you don't have to, Daniel said. If you don't want to. Emma looked between them. Are you asking Miss Moore to stay? Like, not just because of emergencies? I think, Daniel said carefully, I'm asking if she wants to find out what happens when we don't have crisis as an excuse anymore. Lena smiled, soft and genuine. I think I'd like that very much. Good, Emma said, snuggling back against Daniel. Because I like having her here. It makes the house feel more like home. And Daniel, holding his daughter with Lena beside him on the couch, realized Emma was right. This was what home felt like. Not perfect control or rigid schedules or carefully maintained distance. Just people choosing to stay, choosing connection, choosing each other. The fight was over. The real work was just beginning. And for the first time in 5 years, Daniel was ready for it. The morning after the board meeting, Daniel woke to the smell of coffee and the sound of voices in his kitchen. For a moment, disoriented by sleep, he thought he dreamed the past week. The storm, the tree, Frank's removal, Lena's question about staying. Then Emma's laugh drifted up the stairs, followed by Lena's lower response. And Daniel knew it was real. He found them at the kitchen table, Emma showing Lena something on her tablet while pancake batter sat waiting in a bowl. They looked up when he entered, and the easy domesticity of the scene made his chest tight. Morning, Daddy. Miss Moore's teaching me about color theory for my art project. Is she now? Daniel moved to the coffee pot, poured himself a cup. I didn't know graphic design included teaching 7-year-olds. It includes teaching anyone who wants to learn, Lena said, but she was smiling. Besides, Emma's got good instincts. She just needs vocabulary for what she already understands. I'm using complementary colors, Emma announced proudly. That's colors that are opposite on the wheel. They make each other look brighter. Like you and Miss Moore, Daniel said without thinking, then felt heat creep up his neck when both of them looked at him. I mean, in terms of skills, opposite but complementary. Lena's smile turned knowing. Nice save. Emma giggled, then grabbed the batter bowl. Can we make pancakes now? I'm starving. They fell into the rhythm that had developed over the past few days. Emma mixing while Lena managed the griddle, and Daniel set the table. It felt natural, practiced, like something they'd been doing for years instead of days. Daniel caught himself relaxing into it, letting go of the constant vigilance that usually governed his mornings. I got an email from the Morrison project manager, he said as they sat down to eat. They're reinstating the contract. Apparently Frank's removal and the county inspector's report made it clear where the actual problems were. That's great. Lena reached across the table, squeezed his hand. I know how worried you were. I was terrified, Daniel admitted. That contract represents stability for the next 6 months. Losing it would have meant scrambling, taking jobs I didn't want, probably cutting into the time I have with Emma. But you didn't lose it. You fought for what was right, and it worked out. This time. Daniel looked at their joined hands, still not quite used to casual touch, to someone being there. What about next time? What happens when fighting for what's right costs me everything? Emma was watching them with those too perceptive eyes. But you'd still do it, right, Daddy? Even if it was hard? He thought about his daughter's question, about the lessons he was teaching through action rather than words. Yeah, baby girl, I'd still do it. Because some things matter more than easy, Emma said, like she was quoting someone. Where did you hear that? You. You say it all the time when we talk about hard stuff. She took another bite of pancake. Like when I didn't want to try the monkey bars because I was scared. You said some things matter more than easy, and being scared is okay as long as I don't let it stop me from trying. Daniel felt something crack in his chest. He'd been so focused on protecting Emma, on maintaining stability, that he'd forgotten she was also watching him live, learning from his choices. And lately, those choices had been about more than just safety. You're right, he said. Some things do matter more than easy. After breakfast, while Emma was occupied with her art project, Daniel and Lena sat on the back porch with fresh coffee. The morning was cool, the sky clear, the neighborhood quiet in that particular weekend way. From here, Daniel could see the gate between their yards, still open, the path between their lives still accessible. I need to go back to my house today, Lena said. Start cleaning up, assess the damage, figure out what needs to be fixed. Daniel's stomach dropped, even though he'd known this was coming. Right, of course. But I was thinking, she turned to face him. I was thinking maybe I don't move back completely. Not yet. What do you mean? I mean the house needs work, major work. The insurance claim is going to take weeks to process. The repairs will take longer. It doesn't make sense to live in a construction zone. Lena's voice was careful, like she was testing each word. So maybe I stay here while the work happens. Help with Emma, work on your rebrand, figure out what this is between us without the pressure of crisis forcing us together. You want to stay? I want to try. If you want to try. She looked down at her coffee. I know it's fast. I know it's probably crazy. We barely know each other. I know you hate when people underestimate you. I know you take your coffee with too much sugar and not enough cream. I know you talk to yourself when you're designing and you unconsciously hum when you're concentrating. Daniel set his cup down. I know you see through every defense I've spent years building, and instead of running, you stay. I know you make Emma laugh in a way she hasn't laughed since her mother left. I know. Lena kissed him. It was brief, soft, tasting of coffee and possibility. When she pulled back, her eyes were bright. Okay, she said. We try. We try, Daniel agreed, and felt the last of his careful walls crumble. The next week unfolded in a pattern of new normal. Lena officially moved her work setup into Daniel's office, turning the spare room into a design studio. Emma helped her arrange the space, offering opinions on lighting and desk placement with serious concentration. Daniel watched them work together and felt his definition of family expanding. The HOA insurance adjuster came and went, documenting damage, approving Lena's claim. The estimate for repairs came in at $15,000. New fence, yard restoration, foundation inspection. All covered. All Frank's legacy of negligence made concrete in numbers. James, the new interim HOA president, called Daniel personally to apologize. I should have stood up to Frank years ago. We all should have. You stood up when it mattered, Daniel said. That's what counts. Still, I wanted you to know that things are going to be different. We're implementing new protocols for safety inspections, regular board meetings, transparent budget reporting. No more one-person rule. That's good to hear. Also, James hesitated. We'd like you to consider joining the board. We need people who actually care about the community, not just property values. Daniel thought about it, about taking on more responsibility, about the time it would take from Emma and his business, and the fragile new thing growing with Lena. Then he thought about the kind of neighborhood he wanted Emma to grow up in, the lessons about engagement and accountability. Let me think about it, he said. Talk to my family. Your family, James repeated. That's Lena and Emma? Yeah, Daniel said, and the word felt right. That's my family. He brought it up that night over dinner, homemade pasta that Lena had taught Emma to make, the kitchen dusted with flour and filled with laughter. When he explained James's offer, Emma bounced in her seat. You should do it. Then you can make sure everything's fair. It would mean meetings once a month, probably some weekend work on community projects. Daniel looked at Lena. Time away from other things. Time invested in where we live, Lena corrected. In making it better. I think that matters. We, Daniel repeated. You said where we live. Lena flushed but didn't look away. I did. Is that okay? It's more than okay. Emma looked between them. Does this mean Miss Moore is staying for real, not just while her house gets fixed? That's up to Miss Moore, Daniel said. It's up to all of us, Lena corrected. This is Emma's home too. She gets a say. Emma considered this with appropriate seriousness. I vote yes. You make good pasta and you don't treat me like I'm little. Plus, Daddy smiles more when you're here. Well then, Lena's voice was thick. I guess I'm staying. The Morrison project started the following Monday, and Daniel threw himself into it with renewed focus. But the work felt different now, not like escape or obligation, but like purpose. He came home to dinner conversations and Emma's homework help, and Lena working late on his rebrand at the kitchen table. She showed him the first logo concepts on a Thursday night, after Emma was asleep. Daniel studied the design spread across the table. Clean, professional, exactly the kind of elevated branding his business needed. These are incredible. You sound surprised. I'm not. I knew you were good. I just didn't realize you were this good. He pointed to his favorite, a design that incorporated natural elements with modern typography. This one. It feels like what I've been trying to build. Traditional craftsmanship meeting contemporary standards. That's exactly what I was going for. Lena pulled up the full brand package on her laptop. Website mock-ups, business cards, vehicle wraps, social media templates, complete visual identity. Daniel scrolled through the presentation, seeing his business transformed from amateur to professional in Lena's capable hands. This is worth more than yard work. It's worth exactly what we agreed on, a fair trade between neighbors. She closed the laptop. Besides, this isn't just about the work anymore. It's about building something together. Is it? Daniel Brooks, are you really going to make me spell this out? Lena turned to face him fully. I'm in love with you. Not because you saved me from HOA violations, or because you let me stay here, or because you're good with a chainsaw. I'm in love with you because you see problems and fix them, because you love your daughter with everything you have, because you let me pass those walls even though it terrified you. Daniel felt like the air had been knocked from his lungs. Lena, you don't have to say it back. I know you're careful with words, with promises, with anything that feels like risk. She touched his face gently. I just needed you to know. No more dancing around it. No more pretending this is just convenient or temporary. I almost walked away, Daniel said quietly. When Frank threatened my business, when everything got complicated, I almost chose safety over you. But you didn't. But I wanted to. For a moment, I wanted to retreat to what I knew, what felt controllable. He covered her hand with his. That scared me more than anything Frank could do. The realization that I could lose you hurt worse than losing the contract. And I'm in love with you too. Probably have been since you called me out for watching, for noticing everything, for hiding behind routines. Daniel pulled her closer. I'm terrible at this. At relationships, at letting people in, at believing things can work out. Good thing I'm patient. Are you? Not even a little bit. Lena smiled. But I'm willing to learn, if you are. Daniel kissed her then, properly this time, with all the feeling he'd been holding back. When they finally broke apart, he was breathing hard. Emma's going to be insufferable about this, he said. She's been dropping hints for weeks. She's smarter than both of us combined. She really is. They sat on the couch, Lena tucked against Daniel's side, and talked about the future in concrete terms for the first time. About Lena's house repairs and whether she'd sell or rent it out. About Emma's reaction and how to navigate being a couple with a 7-year-old watching. About the business rebrand launch and the HOA board position and all the ordinary complications of building a life together. I'm still scared, Daniel admitted in the quiet. Scared I'll mess this up, that I'll retreat when things get hard, that I'm not actually capable of this. You faced down Frank Winters, ran into a storm toward live power lines, and voluntarily invited me to stay in your perfectly organized house. Lena's voice was warm. I think you're more capable than you give yourself credit for. Or I'm just stubborn. That too. Friday brought the final HOA board meeting before elections. Daniel attended with Lena beside him, no longer as adversaries facing violations, but as community members engaged in improvement. Margaret opened with announcements about new safety protocols, transparent budgeting, regular maintenance schedules. We're also implementing a community feedback system, James added. Any resident can submit concerns or suggestions directly to the board, with guaranteed response within 2 weeks. What happened to Frank? Someone called from the audience. Is he still in the neighborhood? Margaret's expression was diplomatic. Mr. Winters has chosen to remain in his home. He's welcome to do so as long as he follows the same rules as everyone else. Daniel had seen Frank exactly once since the vote, across the grocery store, both pretending not to notice each other. It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation. It was just the reality of shared space, of moving forward without resolution. After the meeting, several neighbors approached Daniel about joining the board officially. He listened to their reasoning, considered the time commitment, looked at Lena for confirmation before agreeing. "You're sure?" he asked her later, in the truck heading home. "I'm sure. You care about this place, about making it better. That matters." She squeezed his hand. "Plus, it'll give me time to work on my own client base without feeling guilty about monopolizing your evenings." "You're taking on more projects?" 3 new clients this week alone. Apparently word's gotten around about the Brooks Landscaping rebrand. She smiled. "We're both building something." "That's good." Emma was waiting up when they got home, curled on the couch with Mrs. Chen. The older woman smiled at them knowingly. She insisted on staying awake to hear about the meeting. "Everything go okay?" Emma asked. "Everything went perfectly," Daniel said. "The neighborhood's in good hands now." After Mrs. Chen left, the 3 of them settled on the couch, Emma between Daniel and Lena, a family configuration that was becoming familiar. Daniel felt contentment settle over him, warm and unexpected. "Can I ask something?" Emma said into the comfortable quiet. "Always." "Are you and Miss Moore girlfriend and boyfriend now?" Daniel looked at Lena over Emma's head. "We're working on it." "What does that mean?" "It means we care about each other. We're figuring out how to be together in a way that works for everyone." Lena touched Emma's hair gently. "Including you. Your opinion matters, Emma." "I already told you I like you." Emma yawned. "I just wanted to make sure you knew you were allowed to kiss and stuff, like in movies." Daniel choked on air. Lena laughed, delighted. "Thank you for the permission," Lena managed. "We'll keep that in mind." "Okay, I'm tired now." Emma stood, kissed Daniel's cheek, then surprised them both by kissing Lena's too. "Good night." She padded upstairs, leaving them alone in the sudden quiet. "She kissed me," Lena said, sounding stunned. "She likes you." "Daniel, she kissed me goodnight like I'm part of this." "You are part of this." He pulled her close. "You have been since the moment you destroyed that lawnmower and called me the most irritating neighbor you'd ever had. I also said you never stopped watching. I'm still watching, just not from a distance anymore." 2 months later, Lena's house was completely repaired. The insurance had covered everything: new fence, restored yard, even some upgrades the inspector recommended. It looked better than it had when she bought it, better than it probably ever had under Mrs. Patterson's tenure. Daniel stood in the backyard looking at the transformation. The tree was gone, professionally removed and hauled away. The cables he'd installed were long since taken down. There was no evidence of the crisis that had brought them together, no trace of the emergency that had forced proximity. "It's weird, isn't it?" Lena said, appearing beside him. "Looking at it now, you'd never know any of that happened." "The yard looks good." "It does. You did good work here." She looked up at him. "Question is, what happens now?" They'd been dancing around this for weeks. Lena's house was ready. She could move back any time. Their original arrangement, the trade, the temporary stay, had been fulfilled beyond any reasonable expectation. "Emma asked me if you were going to leave," Daniel said. "Last night before bed. She asked if now that your house was fixed, you'd go back to being just neighbors." "What did you tell her?" "I told her that was up to you, that I hoped you'd stay, but I'd understand if you needed your own space." "Liar." Lena's voice was soft. "You told her it was up to me because you're still scared to ask for what you want." But Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'm terrified. Every day I wake up and wonder when you're going to realize you can do better, that you don't need the complicated mess of dating a single father with control issues and a history of failed relationships. Here's what I need." Lena took both his hands. "I need someone who sees me, really sees me, not just what I can do for them. I need someone who challenges me to be brave even when it's scary. I need someone whose 7-year-old daughter gives me parenting advice and makes me laugh." She squeezed his hands. "I need you, Daniel, complications and all. You're not moving back to your house. I'm thinking of renting it out, maybe to a nice family who needs a fresh start like I did." Lena smiled. "Unless you're kicking me out." "Never." Daniel pulled her close, pressed his forehead to hers. "Stay. Please stay." "I thought you'd never ask properly." They kissed in the yard where everything had started, surrounded by the evidence of crisis overcome and community rebuilt. When they finally broke apart, Daniel saw movement in his kitchen window. Emma, watching with Mrs. Chen beside her, both of them clearly pleased. "We have an audience," he murmured. "We always have an audience. Your daughter's a romantic. She gets it from her father." "Do you now?" Lena laughed. "The man who color codes his tools and schedules spontaneity? I'm working on it." "You are." She kissed him again, quick and sweet. "You really are." The official business launch happened on a Saturday, exactly 6 months after the morning Daniel had first heard Lena's lawnmower screaming. The new website went live, the rebranded trucks hit the streets, and Daniel held a small open house at his office to show clients the transformation. Lena had insisted on being there, despite Daniel's protests that she'd already done enough. She moved through the room, introducing herself as the designer, fielding questions about process and vision, making connections that would later turn into her own client base. Emma was there too, wearing a dress she'd picked out herself and explaining to anyone who'd listen that Miss Moore had taught her about color theory, and that's why the logo worked so well. Daniel watched his daughter charm potential clients and felt pride mix with wonder. "You did good," Margaret said, appearing beside him with a glass of wine. "The rebrand, the business, the family situation, all of it." "Family situation?" Daniel raised his eyebrows. "Oh, please. Everyone knows you and Lena are together. Everyone knows she's living with you and Emma. Everyone's thrilled about it, except maybe Frank Winters, and his opinion stopped mattering months ago." Margaret smiled. "We like seeing you happy, Daniel. It's good for the neighborhood." After the guests left, Daniel, Lena, and Emma cleaned up together. It was easy now, this rhythm of shared work, shared space, shared life. Emma chattered about the party, while Lena washed glasses and Daniel dried, and everything felt simultaneously extraordinary and completely ordinary. "I'm proud of you, Daddy," Emma said as they finished. "You built something really good." "We built something good," Daniel corrected. "All three of us." "Is Miss Moore going to be my stepmom?" The question was casual, like Emma was asking about the weather. Daniel and Lena froze. They'd been avoiding the label conversation, content to let things develop naturally, but Emma, as always, cut through the comfortable ambiguity. "That's a long way off, sweetheart," Daniel managed. "That's something that takes time, conversation, making sure everyone's ready." "I'm ready," Emma said simply. "I like having a family that's more than just us. I like that we're not lonely anymore." Lena knelt down to Emma's level. "Your dad and I love each other very much, and I love you very much. But becoming a stepmom is a big deal, and we want to make sure we do it right. Does that make sense?" "I guess, as long as you don't leave." "I'm not leaving," Lena promised. "I'm staying right here, for as long as you and your dad will have me." "Forever then," Emma said confidently, and hugged her. Over Emma's head, Daniel met Lena's eyes and saw his own feelings reflected back. Love, fear, hope, certainty. They'd figure out the timeline, the labels, the legal details, but the important part was already decided. Later that night, after Emma was asleep, Daniel and Lena sat on the back porch under a sky full of stars. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of peaceful that only comes after storm and resolution. "I've been thinking," Lena said into the comfortable silence. "Dangerous." "Hush," she elbowed him gently. "I've been thinking about what Emma said, about family, about not being lonely, about building something good." And she's right. We have built something good. Not perfect, not without complications, but good. Lena turned to face him. "I don't need a ring or a wedding or any of that right now, but I need you to know that this is it for me. You and Emma, this life we're building. I'm all in." Daniel felt his chest expand with something too big for words. "I'm all in too. Have been since you kissed me in your backyard and told me you were in love with me. I seem to remember you saying it back. Best decision I ever made." He pulled her close. "Besides letting you stay." "You didn't let me stay. I decided to stay." But she was smiling. "There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yes. One implies you had control over the situation. The other acknowledges that I'm exactly as stubborn as you are. Fair point. They sat together watching stars, and Daniel thought about the journey from that first disrupted Saturday morning to this moment of quiet contentment. It hadn't been smooth or planned or anything like the controlled life he'd tried to maintain. It had been messy and scary and full of moments where he'd wanted to retreat to safety. But it had also been real. And real, Daniel was learning, was better than safe. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For destroying your lawnmower, for calling me out for watching, for not letting me hide." He kissed her temple. "For staying even when I gave you every reason to leave." "You never gave me reasons to leave. You gave me reasons to stay." Lena snuggled closer. "You showed me what it looks like when someone chooses people over perfection, when someone fights for what matters even when it's hard. I learned that from you. We learned it from each other." 6 more months passed in a blur of ordinary and extraordinary moments. Emma started 3rd grade with stories about Miss Moore, who wasn't quite her stepmom but was definitely more than just Daddy's girlfriend. The business grew beyond Daniel's projections. New clients drawn by the professional branding and word-of-mouth reputation. Lena's design practice flourished, her client base expanding beyond the neighborhood. The HOA thrived under James's leadership, implementing programs and protocols that actually served the community. Frank Winters remained in his house, quiet and diminished, no longer the threat he'd once been. And through it all, Daniel learned to let go. Let go of perfect control, of rigid schedules, of the belief that safety meant isolation. He learned that Emma was right. Some things mattered more than easy. That being brave meant trying even when you were scared. That family could be built, not just born into. On a Saturday morning, exactly 1 year after the lawnmower incident, Daniel woke to familiar sounds, coffee brewing, voices in the kitchen, life happening around him. He lay in bed for a moment, savoring the difference between this morning and that one a year ago. Then Lena appeared in the doorway with coffee and a smile. And Daniel knew with absolute certainty that this was what he'd been missing all those years. Not perfection or control or protection from pain, just this: connection, partnership, the messy, beautiful reality of building a life with someone. "Happy anniversary," Lena said, settling beside him on the bed. "Of what?" "Of the day you ran across the yard to stop me from destroying my lawnmower. The day everything changed." "Everything changed before that," Daniel said. "It changed the moment you moved in next door." Romantic and accurate. She kissed him. "Emma wants to make anniversary pancakes. Apparently it's a thing now." "Everything's a thing with her." "Lucky for us." They went downstairs together, and Daniel was struck again by how right this felt, how natural. Emma chattering about her pancake recipe while Lena supervised and Daniel set the table. The 3 of them moving around each other with practiced ease, a family in function, if not yet in law. "I have something for you," Lena said after breakfast, while Emma was distracted with cleanup. She handed him a small box. Inside was a key, simple, practical, meaningful. "It's to my house," she explained. "The rental agreement ends next month, and I'm not renewing it. I'm selling the place, making this official." "Lena, I'm not asking you to propose. I'm not pushing for more than you're ready to give." She took his hand. "I'm just saying that home isn't a building for me anymore. It's wherever you and Emma are. So I'm making it official." Daniel looked at the key, then at the woman who'd crashed into his carefully controlled life and made it infinitely better. "Move in with us. Officially. Not as a temporary arrangement or because of crisis, but because this is where you belong. I thought you'd never ask. I'm asking now. Move in. Be part of this family. Help me raise Emma and build the business and figure out what comes next." He pulled her close. "Say yes." "Yes," Lena said. "Obviously yes." Emma appeared in the doorway, took in the scene, and grinned. "Finally! I've been waiting forever for you guys to figure this out." "You're 7, Daniel protested. "You haven't been waiting forever." "Felt like forever." She bounded over, inserting herself between them for a group hug. "Now we're a real family, right?" "We've been a real family," Lena said. "This just makes it official." "Good. Can we celebrate with ice cream?" "It's 9 in the morning," Daniel said. Anniversary ice cream doesn't have a time limit, Emma argued. Lena laughed. She's got you there. So they had ice cream at 9 in the morning, because why not? Because some rules were meant to be broken, because family meant celebrating the moments that mattered regardless of what the clock said. Later, while Emma was at a friend's house and the afternoon stretched lazy before them, Daniel and Lena sat on the back porch. The gate between the yards, the one he'd finally removed last month, stood open, a permanent passage now rather than a temporary connection. Do you ever regret it? Daniel asked. Moving here, getting tangled up with me and my complicated life? Never. Not once. Lena took his hand. Do you? I regret waiting so long to let you in. I regret almost walking away when things got hard. He looked at their joined hands, but I don't regret anything after that. Every moment since I decided to fight instead of run has been worth it. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts. They taught me I was stronger than I thought, that we were stronger together. We are. Lena leaned her head on his shoulder. So what now? What comes after the crisis ends and the dust settles and it's just real life? Now we live it, Daniel said. We take Emma to school and grow the business and argue about whose turn it is to do dishes. We have boring Tuesdays and chaotic weekends and everything in between. Sounds perfect. Sounds ordinary. Same thing for people like us. Daniel thought about that. How ordinary had once meant lonely, meant controlled, meant safe but empty. How now it meant full, connected, messy in the best possible way. Yeah, he agreed. It is. The sun set over the neighborhood, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. In the distance, Daniel could hear the sounds of life, neighbors talking, children playing, the ordinary symphony of a community at peace. Frank Winters drove past the house, slow and deliberate like always, but Daniel didn't tense or worry. Frank was just another neighbor now, stripped of power, reduced to being simply human. I saw Frank at the store yesterday, Lena said quietly. He actually nodded at me. Progress. Or resignation. She was quiet for a moment. Do you think he learned anything from all this? I think he learned that consequences exist. Whether that translates to actual change? Daniel shrugged. Not my problem anymore. Look at you, letting go of control. I'm working on it. You are. She kissed his cheek. I'm proud of you. Emma came home full of stories about her friend's new puppy and how they should definitely get a dog because families need dogs. Daniel and Lena exchanged looks over her head, conversations for later, decisions to make together, the ongoing negotiation of building a life. That night, tucking Emma into bed, Daniel watched his daughter's face in the soft lamplight and felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. Daddy, are you happy? Emma asked sleepily. Yeah, baby girl, I'm happy. Good. You deserve to be happy. She yawned. So does Miss Moore. So do I. You absolutely do. Then we all win. Her eyes drifted closed. Love you, Daddy. Love you too, sweetheart. Downstairs, Lena was already in their bed. Their bed now, officially, not just practically. Daniel stood in the doorway for a moment, taking in the scene. The woman he loved curled under covers, reading on her tablet, existing in his space like she'd always belonged there. Because she had. From that first Saturday morning, from the moment she'd called him out for watching, for caring, for noticing everything while pretending not to need anything. She'd belonged in his life even when he was too scared to admit it. You coming to bed? Lena asked, looking up. Yeah, just appreciating the view. Sap. Your fault. She laughed, setting aside the tablet as he joined her. They settled into comfortable positions, her head on his chest, his arm around her shoulders, everything exactly where it should be. Daniel? Lena's voice was quiet in the darkness. Thank you for not being perfect, for being messy and scared and human. She traced patterns on his chest. Perfect is boring. This is so much better. This is terrifying. Same thing, really. How do you figure? Because anything worth having is terrifying. If it wasn't scary, it wouldn't matter. She propped herself up to look at him. You taught me that. You ran into a storm toward live power lines because I mattered more than safety. You did. You do. So we keep choosing each other. Every day, even when it's hard, even when it's scary, we keep choosing this. Lena kissed him softly. Deal? Deal, Daniel agreed. Outside, the neighborhood settled into night. The same houses, the same streets, the same spaces that had witnessed crisis and confrontation and change. But everything was different now. Everything had shifted from isolated existence to connected life, from control to trust, from safety to love. Daniel had spent 5 years building walls, maintaining distance, protecting himself and Emma from anything that threatened their carefully constructed stability. And then Lena Moore had moved in next door with a broken lawnmower and a determination to start over, and those walls had crumbled. Not all at once, not easily, but completely. And what remained wasn't the chaos Daniel had feared. It was just life. Messy, complicated, beautiful life. The kind of life worth fighting for, worth running into storms for, worth opening gates and taking risks and believing that some things mattered more than safety. Emma was right. They'd built something good. Not perfect, not without struggle, but good. Real. Theirs. And as Daniel drifted to sleep with Lena beside him and his daughter down the hall, and tomorrow stretching ahead with all its ordinary possibility, he thought about that first Saturday morning, about the noise that had shattered his peace, about the woman who'd refused to let him hide, about the choice to help instead of retreat. Best decision he'd ever made. Besides, of course, deciding to stay.